I think we all need to be a little bit more aware of how much of an impact and a ripple effect that kindness can have. The potential of kindness is huge. It's huge. That ripple effect can go on and on and on and on. Welcome to Classic Advice. I'm Scarlett Classic, your host. My goal with this podcast is to share my life advice and experiences with the purpose to inspire us and to challenge us to become better versions of ourselves. Each and every episode will be dedicated to that. This week, the topic that I had picked is Kindness Matters. Something happened to me recently, and it got me thinking about this topic of how much kindness really does matter. And so this is what happened is I have a big dog run for my dogs, and I was in it cleaning it out and giving them fresh water. And when I went to go do their water bucket, I saw that there was a honeybee swimming in there that was drowning. He was drenched and hardly swimming anymore. Now, a little bit of backstory is a couple of days prior to this, I had rescued a bee out of their kiddie pool water with a leaf because I was too chicken to scoop them up with my hand. And then Levi's like, oh, it's no big deal. I rescued a bee out of there a couple days ago, and I just scooped him up, and he crawled up my arm and hung out on my shoulder for a bit, and then he flew away. And I was like, okay, well, if Levi can do this, I don't need to be scared. And so I put my hand in the water and underneath of him, and I just slowly raised it up. And what a cutie. Immediately, he started humming. And I'm thinking to myself, please don't sting me, please don't sting me, please don't sting me. And so anyways, I go up to the top of the dog run and then down the hill to where my husband was. Roy was just hanging outside with me while I was doing my thing. And I gave the bee to him with, on my way down, I just picked a clover, a flower clover, and gave him to Roy. And he went onto the clover and he just hung onto it for dear life, the poor little guy. Yeah, it was so cute. And yeah, so I gave it to Roy, and then I finished doing my thing. When I was done, I wanted to hang out with my new buddy because he was still with Roy. So I took him and the flower from Roy, and Roy went into the house and got some sugar water on a plate for him. And we tried to get him off of me and onto the plate, but he was not having any of it. I think he saw the water and was like, no, hard no. What are you doing to me? I just almost drowned. I don't want to even see H2O for a long, long time. Right, that's what and so it was so cute. He just kept wanting to come back onto my hand. So I was like, okay, hon, he just wants to hang out with me. I'll hang out with him for a bit until he's good. I mean, it can't take that long. So I hung out with this little bee on my hand for, I really didn't keep track of time, but if I had to hazard a guess, I would say probably about 30 minutes. We're so cute. And I have a photo on my website, classicchronicles.ca, if you want to see the photo of him starfished on my hand. It's so cute. And he hung out with me. And he would rest, and then he would clean himself and, scrub his little antennae and wash his fur. And eventually, slowly, he started to get a little fluffier. Then he got poofy and dry, and eventually he took off. And when he did, he flew off of my hand, and he did 3 or 4, I didn't count. He did 3 or 4 circles right in front of my face. It was maybe a foot and a half or so wide, just in front of my face, in diameter, just 3 or 4 times, and then he took off. And my heart, it was just so So sweet. It was like he was saying, thank you. And that got me thinking as I was sitting there with this precious little life in my hands. And full disclosure, if he had been a wasp, I would have let him drown. Yeah, he would have just stung me. But a honeybee, a bumblebee, they're so, like, they really are sweet. And it got me thinking as I was looking at this little bee and this little life in my hand, at how much kindness matters. Oh, kindness matters so much more than I think. I think sometimes maybe we forget how much kindness really does matter. For example, we went camping end of June. We went up to Hinton. And one of the days we had decided we wanted to go on a hike, but the hike starting point, we needed to drive to it in order to do it. So we all hopped in the truck to go do this hike. And we didn't get very far, and my truck was shifting, Princess was shifting really hard. And I was like, I better pull over. And yeah, so we pulled over, popped the hood. Roy took a peek under the hood, and I had no transmission oil. Yeah. Yeah, the vehicles need transmission oil. But we did, like, Roy did do a little bit of work on the truck before we had left, and he did do some work in the transmission. So we weren't exactly surprised at that fact, but so the where I had pulled over on the road, there wasn't a lot of traffic in that area. Just we were pretty remote, really. But I wiggled myself under there, barely fit. I wiggled myself under there, and underneath there's like a pan with a bunch of bolts that it's the oil pan tray for the transmission, and it was leaking between two of the bolts in the corner. It was leaking out, and Roy had welded some, I'm not going to get into detail because it's boring, but he had done some work, and he welded on the pan so that warped the pan, and that's where it was leaking. And so I'm under there trying to like ratchet with not very much room. Like, it was like my face and the truck was like 4 inches from my face, so not a whole lot of maneuvering room. I'm under there trying to like tighten all these bolts, and it was still kind of leaking out of like between the two bolts in the corner there, and I kind of whapped it a bunch of times. Anyways, long story short, I got it to stop leaking. We didn't have any transmission fluid though, so my parents were camping with us. They drove to town to get us fluid, but there was a couple of cars that drove right by us. Didn't stop to ask if we were okay. They just drove by. And every time somebody drove by or I could hear someone coming, I'd be like, oh, maybe they'll stop and see. Maybe they'll have something. Zoom. And then a few minutes later, somebody else, oh, maybe they'll stop. Zoom. And I kind of like was a little bit, I mean, we didn't really need help, like, unless somebody was carrying ATF with them, which is highly unlikely. But then someone did stop and asked, hey, do you need anything? And Roy's like, well, by chance, do you have a funnel? Because the hole that you put the oil into for the transmission fluid is like not even 2 centimeters, not even an inch in diameter. Like, it's quite a small hole, and it's tricky to get oil in there without just wasting a bunch. So we had cut like a water bottle in half to try to make a makeshift funnel. So he had asked if they had one. They're like, oh yeah, we have a bunch of paper ones here, you can have one. Ha ha ha. So nice. It was so nice of them to do that. And when they did, I was like, they didn't have to. They really didn't have to stop. But they did. And when they did, and they asked, do you need anything? And they had something to help, and they were more than willing to help. It just brought so much warmth to my soul. It was so nice that they had done so. Kindness is one of my favorite things in the world, I think. When you show kindness to somebody else, like when I showed kindness to that little bee, or when those people stopped and showed kindness to us when we had broke down in the mountains, it made me just warm my heart. It warmed my heart. And it brought so much happiness and joy that I could help this little bee. To him, it saved his life. To him, it meant the world. To us, when they stopped and gave us that funnel, it was just very heartwarming, because we could have made do had they not given us the funnel. But the fact that they did give us the funnel was just so kind and so heartwarming. And I think the lesson here is that I think we all need to be a little bit more aware of how much of an impact and a ripple effect that kindness can have. The potential of kindness is huge. It's huge. That ripple effect can go on and on and on and on. To this day, when I see that photo of the bee on my hand, I smile. To this day, when I think about our Hinton trip, that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Someone stopped and helped us out. It was so nice. They didn't have to, but they did anyways. I like to imagine a world that each and every one of us made kindness a priority. I'd like to imagine a world where when we see someone on the side of the road broke down, that we stop and ask them if they're okay. Now, I get it. I understand. As a woman, when I'm by myself, I don't stop just because I don't want anything untoward to happen. But when me and Roy are together, we always stop to make sure that people are okay. Because when someone stopped to ask if we were okay, it meant the world. I'd like to imagine a world that we all make kindness a priority. And what a beautiful world that would be, wouldn't it? To smile at the cashier as she checks you out. To be kind and patient with people. I was in downtown Edmonton this past weekend, which doesn't happen very often, and there was someone crossing the road very slowly, but they were in a wheelchair. And I would have loved to get out to ask if he needed help, but I couldn't in the circumstances just because it was a busy street. And I could have been, as he was wheeling himself across, I was thinking to myself, there's two different ways that this could go. I could be upset because he's taking a long time to cross the road. Or I could be kind and patient with him and smile at him when he waved to say thank you. That's a much, much more beautiful world, isn't it? When we can show kindness to each other and understanding and patience. And I'd like to ask you, what have you done this week to show kindness? To a bee. Can be to a bee. Or to your friends or your family or to a perfect stranger. I would love to hear your stories. I would love to hear your stories of how you showed kindness this week. What did you do this past week to show kindness to whoever? Animal, insect, person. What have you done this week? Now, that brings me to the challenge of the week. My challenge for you guys for this week is the next time you have an opportunity to show kindness, to do so. This can be something simple, like if you routinely go through the drive-thru and get yourself a coffee. When you get to the pay window, instead of buying just your own coffee, buy the person behind you their coffee. Chances are there will be a ripple effect to that act of kindness. The next person will get to the window, expecting to pay, and be overwhelmed. Maybe not overwhelmed, but a flood of joy and happiness when they hear that their coffee's paid for. And then they'll want to give the person behind them that same feeling that they're experiencing right now. And they'll pay for the person behind them. And they'll pay for the person behind them and them and them and so on. What a beautiful, beautiful ripple effect. That's my challenge for the week. Whatever it is that you do, it doesn't have to cost anything. Rescuing a bee, having just a little bit more patience with your kids, having a little bit more understanding with your husband or your wife. And part B of the challenge, like my BFF in podcasting says, please pause, love yourself, be kind to you, and be aware of your ripple. Showing kindness. Showing kindness really does matter. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Here's to you for each and every step that you take to become a better you and making it count. Stay classic, you guys, and by that I mean stay awesome, stay unique, stay excellent. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. It was an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. If you wish to reach out to me or support the show, you can head over to my website, which is ClassicChronicles.ca. And we will see you next week. All right. Love ya. Bye.